2012 saw the Olympic Games come to London town, Barack Obama win his second US presidential election, and thankfully the world not ending as some had predicted. Bloody Mayans, making us all worry for nothing. In the so-called WWE universe, John Cena met The Rock for once in a lifetime, lol, and a group of young men calling themselves The Shield made their presence known, and there were more than enough great matches to keep our minds off the impending apocalypse. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best WWE matches of 2012. Join us. Number 10, Dolph Ziggler vs. John Cena at TLC. Even after going through all the trouble of winning the Money in the Bank ladder match, a wrestler's ownership of the briefcase is not a sure thing. Dolph Ziggler found this out when he was forced to defend his golden ticket against John Cena at TLC 2012. The story should have been that Cena wanted another shot at the world title, but as this was WWE in the 2010s, it was more about him snogging AJ Lee. Even with this considerable brick in his pocket, this ladder match was absolutely brilliant. Ziggler was red hot at the time despite being a heel, and fans were desperate for the briefcase to stay out of Cena's giant roaming hands. Their reactions elevated the excellent action, including a terrifying spill both men took from the top of the ladder. We might have rated this match even higher, but it was dragged down by its dumb story once again when AJ got directly involved in the finish to help the show-off win. That said, I will say that watching her give the 5-knuckle shuffle to Vicky Guerrero was satisfying in a way I still don't fully understand. Number 9, CM Punk vs. John Cena at Night of Champions. After a few false starts, 2012 was finally the year of CM Punk, as he was WWE Champion for the whole ruddy thing. He had plenty of great matches for the belt, some of which we will get to later, but his best bout against Cena, the Batman to his Joker, came at Night of Champions. The two participants had built up plenty of history to draw from in this epic encounter, which took up the best part of half an hour. Punk always got the best out of Cena in the ring, and this night was no exception, as the neon-shirted cyborg threw everything he had at the straight-edge superstar to win back his precious spinning toy. Fans thought Cena had done it when he apparently pinned Punk off a top-rope German suplex, but the referee had actually called for a no contest on account of a double pin. This was a rare example of a dusty finish in modern WWE, and it was done to perfection, leaving just enough time between the bell and the decision to fool fans into thinking the belt had changed hands. And I am all for working the marks. Number 8, the SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank. The Money in the Bank pay-per-view had its third outing in 2012 with 2 spectacular ladder matches for its namesake prize. The Raw match, which was won by John Cena, was fun, if a little predictable, but the SmackDown equivalent was better. Starring Tyson Kidd, Santino Marella, Damian Sandow, Christian, Cody Rhodes, Sin Cara, Tensai, and eventual winner Dolph Ziggler, this stacked match delivered on the big moments. It was a brilliant spot fest, particularly in the last 5 minutes, which saw all 9 participants show off why they deserve to be in the mix. You might not expect the likes of Santino and Tensai to succeed in this environment, but they both more than stepped up. The former A-Train was on especially good form, throwing fools around like the beast WWE wanted him to be. Christian looked like he was about to win when Ziggler shoved him down and unhooked the briefcase as Vicky Guerrero watched on in glee. Look at her little face. Dolph proved to be a very popular winner, which makes this match even better in hindsight. Number 7, Sheamus vs. Daniel Bryan at Extreme Rules. Sheamus vs. Daniel Bryan for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania XXVIII was never going to be a good match. It just wasn't given a chance, as it was only booked to go 18 seconds, with Sheamus pinning Bryan after a distracting kiss from AJ Lee. Thankfully, these two stellar workers were finally given the chance to properly prove themselves 1 month later. They met at Extreme Rules in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the big gold belt, and mercifully it was a certified banger. D-Bry tapped into the psychology of this stipulation to tell a great story. He cost himself the first point by refusing to stop attacking his opponent in the ropes, but managed to do enough damage to quickly take the second fall. Now the champion was hurt and the challenger could smell blood. Sheamus played the valiant foe brilliantly, fighting back against his cerebral foe to not only overcome overcome his injury, but his opponent's technical prowess too. He picked up the final fall with a massive brogue kick, the title still in his ginger clutches. If only they'd been allowed to do this at Mania, would have saved a whole lot of trouble. Number 6, CM Punk vs Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 28. Whilst one world title match at Mania 28 was a complete misfire, the other was a proper treat. Following his return earlier in the year, Chris Jericho began cultivating a heel persona based around the catchphrase "best in the world." Both he and CM Punk had used variations of that moniker in their careers, with Y2J accusing the WWE champion of being little more than a Jericho clone. A Jeri-clone, if you will. Not one to take insults lying down, as we would all come to discover over the next decade or so, Punk met Jericho head-on at the Show of Shows, with the title on the line. Fueled by their animosity for each other, plus the fact that they were both very good professional wrestlers, the pair had a great showing, trading strikes and trying to lock in their signature submission holds, the Walls of Anaconda and the Jericho Vice. Hang on, that doesn't sound right. Punk and Jericho had wonderful chemistry together and were able to deliver an emotional match that culminated with the champ retaining the title via submission. Some may prefer their street fight from the following month, but our money is on this more grounded affair. Number 5, Brock Lesnar vs John Cena at Extreme Rules. On the Raw after WrestleMania 28, Brock Lesnar returned to WWE after 8 years away, and everyone was thrilled, especially that guy in the camo shirt. The Beast, who had done rather well for himself since leaving wrestling, went straight after John Cena, who was still licking his wounds after losing to The Rock the night before. This set up a match for Extreme Rules. Lesnar, Cena, no holds barred, and holy moly did these two take full advantage of that stip. Cena and Lesnar damn near killed each other. Within minutes, Lesnar cut his opponent's head open with some vicious elbow strikes, blood being a rare sight for someone as squeaky clean as PG John. The next big thing continued to bash the fruity pebbles out of his prey, chucking him around like he was a chew toy in the jaws of a particularly muscular and evil dog. However, as was the style at the time, Cena fought back to overcome the odds and pin Lesnar with an AA. Even with an utterly backwards ending, this was still unlike any WWE match for quite some time, and we have to give it its flowers. Number 4, The Shield vs Team Hell No and Ryback at TLC. At Survivor Series 2012, the wrestling world changed forever. Just when Ryback was about to win the WWE Championship, imagine that, he was rushed by 3 men in black turtlenecks. They were Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns, the trio that would come to be known as The Shield. 1 month later, these punk kids, who I'm told would not tidy their bedrooms, were given their debut match at TLC against Daniel Bryan, Kane, and the man that they had screwed at Survivor Series, Ryback. This was supposedly a TLC match, but it was essentially just a standard hardcore brawl that could end via pinfall. Did that matter? Not at all. Despite being wet behind the ears as far as WWE was concerned, Rollins, Ambrose, and Reigns bossed around the two legends and Ryback like they'd been around for decades and looked like total superstars in the process. A brilliant mixture of slick action and brutal carnage, especially when Ryback chucked Rollins off a massive ladder to his doom. This battle for the ages ended when Reigns pinned Bryan following a top rope powerbomb. One of the strongest debut performances in WWE history, The Shield had arrived, and they meant business. Number 3, CM Punk vs Daniel Bryan at Money in the Bank. If you'd have pitched to a Ring of Honor fan in 2004 a WWE Championship match between CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, they would have probably wet their Dungeons & Dragons bedsheets. In 2012, this indie fever dream was made a reality when Punk defended his belt against Bryan at Money in the Bank, and it more than lived up to the hype. With AJ Lee as special guest referee and no disqualification rules in effect, the Beard and the Best went to war, incorporating plunder-based violence into their usual silky smooth style of simulated violence. This was pretty much the perfect mixture of hardcore rules and conventional wrestling brilliance, as there were just as many tasty counters to big moves as there were shots with kendo sticks and other heavy objects. After almost half an hour of knocking each other silly, Punk hit a back superplex to Bryan through a table to keep his reign alive. From wrestling in gym halls in front of about 6 people to fighting over the biggest title in wrestling history, Punk and Bryan had come a long way since their early days. And this wasn't even the best match they had had that year. Number 2, CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan at Over the Limit. 2 months before they clobbered each other's brains out at Money in the Bank, the Muffin Vegan Connection collided at Over the Limit, again for the WWE title. This was the first time they had met on pay-per-view, and they weren't going to let this opportunity go to waste. The two indie darlings proved why they had been amongst the most influential wrestlers outside of the WWE system prior to joining McMahonland. I mean, do I really need to sit here and explain to you why CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan at the height of their powers was a good match? They had more chemistry than an episode of Breaking Bad and were pulling out sequences that were light years ahead of what the rest of mainstream wrestling was offering at the time. Even though some thought the finish was iffy, Punk tapped out to the yes lock while pinning Bryan, this was still an outstanding display of wrestling as an art. Sure, the Money in the Bank match might have had higher high spots, but this is undiluted grappling joy. Really, it should have been the main event, but that spot went to John Cena versus John Laurinaitis instead. Number 1, The Undertaker versus Triple H at WrestleMania 28. At WrestleMania 27, Triple H failed to defeat The Undertaker, which would have been revenge on the dead man for his wins over Shawn Michaels at the previous 2 shows. 1 year on, the two icons met again, this time with HBK as a special guest referee. Oh, and it was inside Hell in a Cell, that detail's quite important. Undertaker versus Triple H, branded End of an Era, was a biblical epic of a wrestling match. The relationship between the two warhorses, their own histories with the referee, the brutal stipulation, these were the perfect ingredients for pure melodrama, and that is exactly what we got. It may have been a bit long for some, but pretty much everything in this bumper match was exactly what it needed to be, especially when Taker got nailed with a super kick and a pedigree only to somehow kick out at 2. In that moment, we were all Shawn Michaels. The Phenom won to keep his streak going and bring to a close the most dramatic portion of it. All 3 men deserved all the praise in the world for delivering on such an incredible story, and they never wrestled each other again. Ever. Agreed?